Again, today we've got as our guest a very good friend of this channel, the one and only soon-to-be Governor Doug Mastriano. As many of you know, Doug is running in the Republican gubernatorial primary for the great state of Pennsylvania, and the latest polls have him absolutely breaking away from a very crowded pack, which of course we'll be talking about today, along with his plans for the Keystone State and why Pennsylvania matters for the national patriot movement as a whole. So soon to be Governor Doug, welcome back. Great to see you again.
Thanks for having me on, Steve. Wow, what earth-shattering news coming out of Washington, D.C. last night.
Isn't it amazing? Just the last, 24 hours, 16 hours. It came out at 8:30 p.m. We were doing an Insiders Club Q&A meeting, live Q&A, and Hannah announced it to all of us. And you are a huge pro-life advocate. You've always been. So what do you think about this leak about the Supreme Court? It looks like actually officially, about to be officially overturning Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, so potentially just a few weeks from now, when the decision is made officially public, and hopefully the justices stay where they are, 6-3 or 5-4. Not sure which figure to believe, but this is going to hand the power on life and abortion back to the states where it always should have been in the first place. I should be part of the national dialogue. We are, 1776, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Number one, life. That we're even questioning whether someone has the right to live or not in these days of modern science. Steve, you and I, the past few years are constantly lectured by the left to follow the science. Okay, let's start with life. Is that a human or a clump of tissue? Oh, it's a human, a distinct DNA. My body, my choice. That's not your body. That's somebody else's body. But when it's just our body, you better take that jab or otherwise you lose your job. What? I thought you said we had freedom of choice.
Right, exactly. Exactly. It's amazing how it's almost comical the way the script has been flipped. But yeah, I think that's exactly what they're worried about. What's the old saying? Liberals don't care what you do as long as it's mandatory. It's they are worried that it's going to go back to the states, and they recognize that 87% of our counties across the nation don't have a single abortion clinic. We've cut abortion rates in half over the last 30 years. We've reduced surgical abortion clinics by 75%. There were 2,000 clinics in 1991. Today, there's only 500. So clearly the trends have been moving towards a pro-life future for some time. One of the implications of this is once it's made official, and I hope they do it in the next, like you just said, just in the next few days, few weeks, just to show they're not intimidated by these subversion tactics. But one of the implications are so-called trigger laws, where over a dozen states have laws in the books that if Roe were to ever get overturned, they would immediately ban or restrict abortion. I saw that Pennsylvania, they had a map that was dark red for like immediate banning of abortion, and then just a lighter shade or shade red for states that would automatically restrict abortion. Pennsylvania was on there as a lighter red. Where is Pennsylvania on that map? Do you know where it stands on so-called trigger laws?
So sadly, since we have a radical left-wing Democrat, Tommy the Wolf, I don't see any pop. I never was a governor more appropriately named. I know I said that before in your show, but the irony, our lieutenant governor, Fetterman, put you in chains. So the left-wing politics got control and a culture of death, as we saw with COVID. Right. But in Pennsylvania, we do have legislation lined up. I do have a heartbeat bill, of course, proposed in the Senate. Representative Stephanie Borowitz has a mirror version of that in the House, and they will pass if they're ever run. But of course, Tom Wolf will get out his veto pen. We'll need to convince 4 Democrats to break ranks in the Senate to override their veto. I think would be lucky. I hate to use the word lucky. I don't believe in luck, but you know what I mean. It'd be good if we kill off 2 or 3 of them, and that's not enough to override a veto. So the only way we're going to do it is with the Governor Mastriano, sadly.
Amen. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Your campaign. You're absolutely blowing out in the water. Latest poll showing you with a 14-point lead in a very, very crowded field. This is a clear breakout from the pack, and the media is taking notice. I've got one of the latest headlines from, I'm sure, your favorite paper, the Philadelphia Inquirer. And it says Doug Mastriano is leading the Pennsylvania primary for governor, and Republican insiders are trying to stop him. So that's all good news to me, by the way. Those are all bona fides. But so give us a sense here of how your campaign is going as we're getting into the final stretch before the primaries, and why are Republican insiders trying to stop you?
Well, those are the people we know as establishment or rhinos, Republican in name only, and they don't agree with me or with you or many Republicans on social issues. They want to, of course, have some issues that we agree with on the economy, but socially, not so sure about us. But I think the key thing is why there's resistance, Steve, is it's about power and control. Right. So they have Governor Mastriano leading the state, which is going to happen, by the way. Their power and influence will be greatly diminished, obviously, because they're not going to own me. I'm not doing this because I'm going to pay people favors or political payback. I'm doing this, as Mr. Smith goes to Washington sounding it might be, I'm doing this for the people. By God, I am. Right. I did not want this job. I didn't want this job, but it needs to happen. And so we're going to take our state back and return the freedoms to the people, return the power to the people. By the way, the government derives its power from the consent of the people. And what I'm hearing across the state, the majority of Pennsylvanians have not consented to the way they've been led, not just the past 2 years, but the past decade plus. Going back to 2004 with just, hey, bring gambling to Pennsylvania, we'll get rid of property taxes. 2004 property taxes cost us between $3,000 and $5,000, depending on the size of your home and property. The gas tax, Republican gas tax, 2013. I know it's high. I was in the Army. I had nothing to do with this, but we're told, but our roads and bridges are in bad shape. We promise the money will fix the roads and bridges. We got bridges falling down in Pittsburgh, before Joe Biden shows up. Really? So they're dissatisfied. And so we're looking for change. So how the campaign is going, it's going fantastic. I know that the rhinos and these corrupt organizations that are they're writing their own demise. They're exposing who they are by attacking me, a patriot who loves this country. And the people know that. And they're writing their end, which is fantastic. They need to go. They're part of the problem. Many of these groups started off as people like us. And then the power went to their heads. They became corrupt. They became kingmakers. And sadly, they've abused that right. But we had an event out in Lansdale towards the eastern part of this, towards the southeast. There must have been 600 people there. Rebby and I had about 200 personal interactions with people, despite all the mailers full of lies and all the TV campaign and attack hits and all that. There was not one negative interaction. There was not one question. So what about that one ad that says you're a fake conservative? I mean, really? Really? Me? Yeah. People. But I will ask folks out there, when you see this kind of stuff, please correct the record. If you hear someone, right, just don't sit, oh, yeah. No, you have to speak up because, I do imagine it will have some sort of effect. The size of the effect is always up to debate, but I know they spent several $1 million on these TV ads and about $400,000 on these negative mailers. But here's the problem they're going to have now. So they're distracting us with all this garbage, all this political doublespeak here. This is the best, Steve. This is the best they have on me. And it's just like, what is he? And right. So they're going to stay. But now the most important issue of our lifetimes come up. Thank you to the leaker. I'm sure their desire for this leak was nefarious, but it's going to work to our advantage. For me, it's not politics. I want abortion to end, period. But how it plays out politically, since you asked about my campaign, now it's going to focus the people that are being bombarded by lies. Now, those lies are going to dissipate to the background as we talk about the right to life. And they're going to a material, physical champion of life has been Doug Mastriano. One of my first pieces of legislation as a senator 3 years ago was the heartbeat bill. They can look at my voting records. So I have a proven record, a demonstrated record of being very pro-life.
Yeah, and it goes all the way down, election integrity, you name it. And I love it when you point out here, that they might make a good commercial, they might make a good mailer, but where were they when they were needed in these moments when election integrity was a concern, or when the heartbeat bill was put forward and the like? Where were these guys? If they're rhinos, that upsets the business model. So they don't like getting into the whole, culture war weeds. But I mean, you, like President Trump, have just you embrace the fact that this is entirely a culture war. Even the way we think of our economy, our economics, and taxes and the like, it all stems from: are we a culture of faith, family, and freedom? Are we this kind of technocratic, globalist elite culture that's ruled by the technocrats from the top down?
And that's really the crossroads we are finding ourselves placed. So if you think about this, so that poll you cited, by the way, because it's important you always know the sources of the polls, because candidates, we fund our own polls. I did one last May. That's the only one I did, because my colleagues are doing enough that I don't need to pay for anything, because they are a little expensive. So we're trying to maximize our dollars. That poll that you cited actually is a Democrat poll, and
I noticed that. Yep.
They honestly want to see what's going on. They don't have their finger on a scale yet. Obviously, when it's between me and Josh Shapiro, they'll be, of course, spinning it. But they're soiling themselves, because I'm the guy that they said last year in that political piece there. They don't want Josh Shapiro to run against me. They'll take any of the other 8 candidates, and Josh Shapiro beat them. I'm the only one that has a statewide movement. That's manifest by our petition drive we talked about on your last show. 2,000 signatures to get on the ballot. My people volunteered and collected 29,000 signatures. It was so impressive that the Lieutenant Governor, John Fetterman, actually, he presides over the Senate when we're in session. He actually came over to the Republican side and said, "Doug, I just got to shake your hand," because he said, "I collected 12,000, thought I was like the big guy. And then I heard you guys collected almost 30,000. I got to shake your hand, because how do you do that?" And it's like, all did it. The other guys, the other top tier candidates, they're like 14 points or more behind me. They actually had to pay. They had to bring in, hired hands from around and outside the state to collect signatures for $200 to $500 a page for 30 signatures. I mean, there's something kind of icky. So,
well, that's like you just said. That's the beauty of representing a movement. The movement takes care of you. It's the wind beneath the wings, as it were, and it speaks for itself. It has its own organic momentum. Certainly Elon Musk is finding that out with Twitter right now. Just all the conservatives coming on over to Twitter. I noticed you have a very impressive Twitter feed, and so you could just see it. It's not what's AstroTurf. It's thoroughly organic, takes care of itself, and you just feel like you've got the wind in your sails. Doug, you're a historian, you're a scholar. What's the significance of Pennsylvania for the rest of the country? Why should patriots say, throughout the nation, why should they care about what happens in the Keystone State?
And I get it. So every state's important, and I'd expect every person, running for governor or elsewhere in their respective states to be very proud of their state and their contribution. But clearly, Pennsylvania has a special central role in our nation's founding. When it was established in 1682, by a decree of King Charles II to William Penn. William Penn said, "My God will make us the seat of the nation, a holy experiment. Nations need an example for us to do what is just and right." And that's just 11 years before he made that statement and established the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. William Penn was in jail for his faith for the 3rd time. And so, found himself, losing the family inheritance and being disinherited by his parents. And they're ashamed of him because he was not a part of the right church. Then he finds himself leading this massive territory, and he prophesied we would be this seed, SEED, a farmer's term, of the nation. And that did happen in 1776. No other state in our union can claim that not only was it where it was founded, but also all the founding fathers spent, months of time within Pennsylvania itself, during the lead up to the Declaration and then later on a Constitutional Convention. And so it's obviously, it was our first capital, Philadelphia, and a centerpiece of so many important actions during the Revolutionary War. And then if that wasn't enough to convince people, of course, the future of our great experiment was at risk and in doubt in 1863 during the midst of the Civil War. And of course, the tide of that war changed at Gettysburg on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of July, which Abraham Lincoln said, of course, would lead to a new birth of freedom. I like what Lincoln says later on in his Gettysburg address. He goes, "It is up to us, rather, the living, to see to the unfinished work." And we see this, Franklin, when asked, we quote this a lot, you and I both, by Mrs. Powell, 1787, Philadelphia Constitution Convention. Well, Mr. Franklin, do we have a monarchy or republic? And he said, a republic if you can keep it. And then now back forward, 7 years later, 87 years later, 1863, Lincoln says, now it's up to us, those who are still alive, to tend to this unfinished work, this maintaining this republic. And so historically, I believe, the Liberty Bell, so much symbology, our laws, the Constitution, Bill of Rights, all in Pennsylvania, and it all came forth here. So I do believe with strong godly leadership here, if Pennsylvania has somebody who's fearless and bold like Ron DeSantis in Florida is, I believe it will unleash freedom across this nation and world, and I believe we'll see a revival coming out of Pennsylvania as the keystone state, spreading to the rest of the nation.
That's so wonderful. Can you give us a sense of what your first 100 days would be like in office? What are some of the priorities for Governor Mastriano? You already mentioned the heartbeat bill. Give us the sense of what those first 100 days would be like.
Yeah, so if there's a lot. I'm looking at DeSantis, what he's doing and has done. I'm looking at Youngkin, like, yep, okay, time for them to look like we're going to go in on day one. Any CRT and any variation by executive order, it's over. And if schools defy me as governor, they will suffer financial consequences. Because I know that in other states, they're finding ways to circumvent these radical people. Gender confusion, using kids about their gender. I mean, this is follow the science. You can look at someone's anatomy and make a decision, or you can look at the genetic code. I mean, either way, it's science. On day one, any gender confusion taught in schools will be over. No more grooming of our kids or teaching, preying upon our kids with ideologies they should not have any exposure to. On day one, of course, we're going to reaffirm parental rights. The kids are not wards of the state. The parents decide what they want their kids to learn, especially socially. Day one, I'll be fighting for school choice. Now, some of these I'll obviously have to work with the General Assembly. And I just want to say, as an aside, I will go in with a lot of executive orders, lifting, removing us from the regional greenhouse gas initiative, which is going to increase our energy costs by 30%. Tom Wolf put us in without an act of the General Assembly. So therefore, by a stroke of a pen, I could take us out of it. But be very clear, on top of these executive orders, I will be working with the General Assembly with legislation to turn these things, these executive orders, these edicts into law. And everything I just listed to you, I believe we have legislation. Some of it's my own legislation. Some of it's my colleagues. And so when they come to my desk, I'll be signing another one. Follow the science. And once again, we're going to have a string of follow the science executive orders followed by bills that I'll sign. It took about a century for women's sports to be have the same opportunities as male sports. And now we have biological males dominating female sports. It shows you that the leftists are phonies. They're not feminists, because they be fighting for women. You got guys who rank around 500 on the men's swim team, and they claim to be now identifying as female. They're number one. Really? We saw that picture of this giant person on the stage there with three petite ladies next to him. So on day one, can only be in the sports with the gender you were born with, not the gender you prefer to have.
Right. Wow. Well, that is a bold agenda for sure. And again, just it shows the culture wars are front and center to everything now. There's no avoiding them. So Rhino's away with you. We need you no longer. Never needed you to begin with. When is the Republican primary, and how can people support you?
So on May 17th, 2 weeks from today, let's get out the vote. I know this is your one last opportunity to have a people's governor. And if we lose this opportunity, we'll be spinning off and be relegated to the ash heap of history, I believe. And I believe that firmly. I see the other top tier candidates and who's backing them, and they're going to lose to Josh Shapiro. They don't have a chance. They lack the backbone. They lack the courage. One of them, I hold my Gettysburg hearing for voting integrity on November 25th, 2020. One of the candidates actually had the power to do something from a legal perspective, and he chickened out. That's why Donald Trump issued that letter saying, "I will not vote for this guy. He's a coward." I mean, that's really strong. And he chickened out. And there he is. We had a debate the other day, and he did terrible. Only 5% of the people around the state said this guy, this swamp creature, did well. 70% for me, praise the Lord. But he's up there, beating his chest like he's some kind of hero, and he had his chance to be a great American hero, and he choked, he chickened out. So those guys will be beat by Josh Shapiro, because Josh Shapiro doesn't come with just his own beta male self, but he also comes with the Philadelphia Inquirer and so many other left wing outlets in his pocket, and that we've seen over the past several years that they do the beck and call the Democrat Party. And what they did to me last year was an orchestrated, colluded plan to bring me down. The Democrat Legislative Campaign Committee admitted that, and it didn't work because the people saw what they did to Donald Trump. So this is it. So how can they support me? Go to doug4gov.com, Doug4gov.com, and volunteer, donate money, volunteer, give some of your time, but more importantly, get out and vote. You, your friends and family, get out and vote for Doug Mastriano, and we're going to change history. It's going to be incredible.
So awesome. We'll have a link down below for everyone just to click on. Doug, I can't thank you enough. And just so everyone sees, I put my wallet where my mouth is, and I encourage everybody out to do the same. I'm going to make a personal pledge of $500 to your campaign, and I encourage everyone else to give what they can to make sure that Pennsylvania Patriot movement wins in November. So, Doug, God's blessings to you. Thank you so much. We look forward to May 17th.
Thank you for your donation and your continued support. You're an incredible American hero. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. God bless.